Max Verstappen won the 2023 Formula One Grand Prix, making it look easy, but it was the rest of the field that kept it interesting this afternoon, with a Mercedes double on the podium. Lewis Hamilton followed home by George Russell, and it was a jumbled up qualifying that gave us the prospect of what could have been a very interesting race with Ferrari and McLaren, if only their fast qualifiers have been able to keep up the pace. Let's find out the story of this afternoon's Grand Prix with Jake Boxall-Legge, and at the circuit is our own Matt Kew. So Matt, I want to start with Max Verstappen all the time because he is making this championship look easy. That car is a beast. Adrian Newey's designed another stellar vehicle. I kind of feel like we should start with Mercedes, though. I cue everyone in the comments saying, another British commentator focusing on Lewis Hamilton. No, I do really want to focus on Max Verstappen. He's doing amazing this year, but it feels like the headline story should be the Mercedes double podium. Did those upgrades that we saw in Monaco finally come through? Was it track specific, Matt, with the cooler temperatures? What can you tell us about why we saw Mercedes on the podium today?
Yeah, there's definitely a confluence of factors. Let's be nice and say there's definitely progress from the updates, and the drivers are way happier, way more comfortable. The balance has been a bit more predictable. But, and there has to be a but, doesn't there? One, as you said, there's quite a few people out of position in that. So you had, Sainz going backwards, Leclerc wasn't a factor, starting from the pit lane, Perez wasn't there, and Verstappen going in from distance, and then the sort of people in the mix, Stroll, Norris, they sort of reset themselves in the race. So then you leave the Mercedes, and definitely the lower temperatures compared to previous weekends has helped them, and it's also exacerbated other tyre problems for Ferrari and Aston Martin, for example. However, the big caveat has to be is go and watch the paddock pack down we did for 12 months ago, and we're going, God, weren't Mercedes brilliant in Barcelona, the way Russell was battling with Verstappen, and the way Hamilton had that mega comeback after tangling with the Haas. So let's not fall into a trap, because this could be a false dawn again. They were super positive last year, so it could be, sort of track specific, happier here. Barcelona, don't forget, is even with the revisions for this year, drivers know this place like the back of their hand. They're probably sick to the death of the sight of the toilets in this place because of the testing they do here year and year, and then coming here for a Grand Prix. So if there's anywhere that, they are going to almost design the upgrades to, so that they, as soon as they hit the ground running, they work and they validate with everything you've seen on a computer screen, it is going to be here. So it is an excellent result, and for the sake of the championship and future championships at this rate up until 2026, let's hope it's a proper sign that after a year and a half Mercedes are back and all of that. But I just had that nagging doubt that there'll be the fluctuation because other people weren't at their best, and this track has been kind to the Mercs in the past.
It was a circuit that suited the Mercedes JBL. We saw George Russell starting behind Sergio Perez, driving. Perez is easily driving the best car this year, and yet George Russell finished ahead of him. So it is a circuit that suits the Mercedes. But what did you make of the upgrades? Because you were in Monaco for us, you weren't at the event this afternoon. We can see, you're at home. But what did you make of the upgrades they brought? Did they think they finally kicked in a gear? Were they almost designed for this circuit because it's the ultimate validation? They've got all of those baseline numbers. What do you think about the Mercedes performance today?
Well, I don't think we were ever going to see a truly clear picture in Monaco because it's just a circuit unlike any other, let's be honest. And it was kind of done out of necessity there because obviously the plan was to bring them to Imola. That couldn't happen, but it would have taken a lot of effort to dial back and put the old spec packaging on the car. So they ran it in Monaco, didn't really see what they needed to do. But when it comes to Barcelona, and it's a track that all of these teams got so much data on, even with the revised final sector, the rollback to the classic layout, the rest of the circuit, the team's got loads of information on that. So when it comes to taking it through its paces in practice and trying to understand how these upgrades work, it's very much a case of it's a familiar venue, so it's quite a controlled test in that sense. So I think that's the bottom line. And then they have the time to kind of play with it and play with the suspension settings and do what they need to do to extract the maximum out of the package. That's what they have the license to do in Barcelona. It seems that after a few worries and a little bit of trouble with it in practice and qualifying, not delivering on the potential that it had, it seems they learned enough for when it came to the race, just put on a bit of a show, because it certainly needed one.
Yeah, Matt, in terms of Max Verstappen today, I noticed that halfway through, he did the old Lewis Hamilton thing that Hamilton used to do in the era of dominance, which is, I'm not sure about these tyres, they're overheating a bit, and sort of throw in some sort of jeopardy. No one believes that. Did the so-called Grand Slam, started from pole, led every lap of the race after pulling out a gap over Sainz in the first section of the race, and got the fastest lap as well. Matt, how are you feeling about Max's dominance once again this weekend? Have you spoken to other teams, team members, team managers about how they're feeling about this year? It seems to me like everybody else at the minute, well, they might as well go home. Obviously not, there's a championship for everyone else's places to play, but it's just so utterly amazing to watch someone at the top of their craft in an amazing vehicle. He's barely breaking a sweat when he finishes the race as well. He's on the radio being like, yeah, nice one. That was pretty cool. So, what do you make of Max's barely breaking a sweat today?
Well, among our team here at the track, I lost the bingo. I had Max complaining of a downshift issue as the complaint here and there this week, but I was wrong. It was the hard tyres he didn't like, didn't it? So better luck next time for me. But yeah, it was a mesmeric drive actually, and with Perez not there and obviously the RB19 being so ahead, amazing winning margin it was, but you have to say, how far was he pushing? All right, he threw in a couple of track limit violations there to suggest he was sort of towards a ragged edge, but the way he then nailed fastest lap at the end, and unfortunately Toto Wolff had to jump on his jet away from here, so he didn't have a chance to put the question to him. But I think that is the question, is after that Mercedes era of dominance, he has that unrivaled sort of insight into when you do have such a grip, how hard are you actually pushing? You're not at 10 tenths all the time, so what has that RB19 got left in reserve? Because the harder you push, the more likely it is to crash, a component breaks. And, the cynical part says the more likely you to push and you end up winning by 30 seconds. Well, the legislators will just go, right, we don't like that, it's bad for the sport, so we'll cut out your dominance and do something else then. So, but it was a fantastic performance all weekend long from Verstappen, and off the back of Perez's sort of nightmare in Monaco, title races going one way. It was fantastic, and of all the complaints about the street circuit bias start to the season, that was where if anywhere is going to suit Perez and give Max a fight from within, that's where it's going to happen. But we're now away from that, and the traditional, more normal tracks where he dominates. Sort of, it's a. Okay, it wasn't a vintage race, was it, Albert? As Albert said in the pen, this was no Canada 2011, but maybe at some point you go, right, okay, if you can get your satisfaction from, Tsunoda versus Zhou and a bit of controversy there, maybe you sit back and go, wow, isn't this amazing, this run of form, and just sort of appreciate it for what it is, because, not to get too philosophical on your Martin, but Max has said that he's got this long-term contract. He has no desire to stay around in F1 until he's 45 or whatever. So if we haven't got 15 years to savour him, let's just sort of make the most of what he's doing at the moment. And that was a top draw performance. It's not gonna lead the highlights reel at the end of the season, is it? That race by any stretch of the imagination. But when I'm a crusty old freelancer being wheeled out of retirement in a few years, maybe that's up there as sort of the top 10 weekend drives or weekend performances, because it was just like there was no one on his level this weekend.
Oh, I'm sure Drive to Survive will find some drama in this weekend to hype up or take some bits from a different bit of the season. And when you don't see so much of the coverage because he's out front, there's no storyline for the TV cameras to follow with Max Verstappen. I'll often, I'll go back and try and either watch some onboards or on F1 TV, I'll just go back and maybe even watch his race. Or my wife will come in. She'll be like, you watched this earlier, what are you watching again? And I think, well, there's worse things I could be looking at on the internet that you catch me doing. So let's talk a little bit about Ferrari now, and let's talk JBL. JBL, as a technical expert, I was so excited to see a massive upgrade, and there was a lot of stuff that Ferrari bought, and it didn't work, let's face it. Sainz qualified well, but it was a weird old qualifying. Leclerc couldn't get the vehicle to work, it seems, on any kind of tyres today. They said, look, hold your horses, we're gonna get like a baseline on this, we're gonna get at that, understand the upgrade, and then we'll dial in performance. JBL, can you tell us more about what on earth happened with Ferrari today? I was expecting so much. I was so excited. Sainz has raced here, I think, 9 times and scored points every time, but never made the podium. Couldn't do it again. Today, the car just wasn't there.
I think a lot of people are expecting a lot more, to be quite honest with you. And if I knew the answer to why they were so abject, I think suddenly I would have a few people knocking on my door with very big wads of cash. It was disappointing to see Sainz fall out of podium contention, because front row start is fantastic. He's one of the few people left of the big four. I think it's just him and Lance Stroll now that are yet to get a podium of those 4 front-running teams. It's really, really strange to see Ferrari in this current shape, because the concept is, very much similar to last year's overall. Sure, it had some problems with tyre management and it lost ground to Red Bull over the course of 2022, but it was still a really solid concept, and Ferrari briefly, fleetingly looked like a championship contender. Unfortunately, it just seems to be this season coming into it, there just seems to be no real consistency from the car. The form book is all over the place, and it kind of seems weekend by weekend. Leclerc might have the good performance and Sainz doesn't, and then Sainz does and Leclerc doesn't, which was the case this weekend. It's just all over the place, and it is frustrating to see, because you want to see this team in the championship battle, because we were having a great time at the start of last year when Leclerc and Verstappen were fighting wheel to wheel. And that seems like a very long time ago now, and Formula One needs it to perform. And with regards to the updates that they've brought, it was a revised sidepod package and various other ancillary parts as well to try and get it working a little bit, going away from the concept that they've used for last season and a bit going for something a little bit more like the Red Bull, basically. Sainz seemed to be able to get it to work, but I think Leclerc had, it just seemed that, he was not of this planet, and not in a particularly good sense, let's say. And he was just struggling all weekend long, didn't have any kind of feeling in the car. Qualifying was garbage. And then the race, he was just completely anonymous. So there's a lot of things that they need to uncover back at Maranello, because that's not the performance that you would expect from them.
Matt, I don't know if you've spoken to Alonso or Stroll. This was Fernando Alonso's first finish outside the top 4, I think. Correct me in the comments below if I'm wrong on that one. He couldn't seem to get the car dialed in all weekend, really, after just a messy qualifying yesterday as well. Obviously, Lance Stroll listens to our podcast and this show, because I said that he absolutely needs to come back after Monaco and finish ahead of his teammate. So, hi Lance, glad that you are watching this and you're listening to our advice. So they just didn't seem to have the same pace. Is it circuit specific? Matt, have you spoken to any of the team? Any diagnosis on why they just couldn't get this circuit hooked up like the other teams?
Well, the horn of our whole team, we've had Stroll, Alonso and Tom McCulloch on the record today. Mike Crack had to venture off early, but it's to sort of almost repeat the Mercedes answer. It's a bit of a confluence of factors. So Aston Martin, have been killer so far this season, with under late braking and basically really low speed traction zone and high acceleration. Well, they've just got rid of one here with the addition of the more sweeping final sector, which definitely makes the track better, but that then hurts Aston Martin. One, because they lose that braking and then traction zone, but also because they have a draggier car. So by adding another 40 kilometers an hour to the speed of the final corner and then carrying that down the street, they're suffering in that respect. And then obviously Alonso was out of position, having gone off in qualifying and damaged his floor. And although between each session they were able to repair bits, ultimately he lost performance and then didn't do a mega lap. As for the rest of the lack of pace, it was, particularly compared to Mercedes, let's say a rival, it's not a glamorous topic, but it was down to the tyres. It was degradation. So Aston, Lance Stroll obviously was really aggressive at the opening, got past Hamilton, but just as soon as the tyres, which this race, compared to the run of street tracks, this race where everyone settles into that really tedious 2 second train from one another, but that's usually because, as Baku proved when Esteban Ocon can do the whole race on one set of tyres, you're managing the temperatures of the tyres rather than the actual degradation. Well, we had a swing bit more towards sort of those the Pirellis fading away, which is why we had a couple of 2 stops, and Aston went soft, 2 softs before switching to medium or hard, and that's because they felt that they needed to have the pace to keep up with Aston. But then the trade-off there is that to have the pace on the quicker tyre to keep up with Mercedes, they're on the less durable compounds, then falling away because of that. So they're sort of compromised on both levels. So it was sort of an offbeat weekend for Aston Martin, ceding second place in the championship. But as you say, credit where credit's due, Stroll was more competitive, and I think it was either on the video or last week that I sort of said that Stroll wasn't particularly chatty, particularly forthcoming in any of the media sessions after the race. Well, you've corrected the record, and I will as well, Martin. He was very chatty, friendly, and had a good smile on his face today. So all is repaired in Autosport Aston Martin relations, it seems.
Yeah, Kimi can do it, but anybody else, please just give us some answers that we can bring our viewers, listeners and readers that give us an insight into how you do your craft. Anyway, JBL, let's talk a little bit about McLaren. Lando Norris starting third, even then said, I think that Max will lap us twice. Well, he was halfway right, because Lando did go to the back. Oscar Piastri 13th was he today, and Lando Norris spent so much of the race stopping Lando at the back of the field. Of course, no virtual safety cars, no safety cars here, nothing to really, or no rain, nothing to bring the pack together and give him a chance. And so, do you think that McLaren were right in their pessimism yesterday, even though they qualified really well? Lando still said, well, yeah, but I think we're going to be finishing outside the points. I thought that was incredibly pessimistic from McLaren. Or would you say realistic, JBL?
I think it was completely exacerbated by the contact on lap 1, where Norris was just clipped by Hamilton going into turn 2. Lost part of his front wing, and then that ruins your race basically. So you've got to come in for a new one because you just lose so much front end balance just because of that tiny little bit of contact. And there's a bit of end plate as well stuck in his front suspension as well, so that's got to come out. And it was just problem after problem. And so once you've lost track position, and I think he had a slow stop as well, it just all falls apart. Without a safety car or anything like that, you can go as fast as you like. You can come up with the craziest strategy, but once you've lost 40 seconds plus on track, then you're not getting that back. So I think there's a little bit of pessimism there, because I think without that, Norris could have been among the points finishers, because I think, he would have been caught in that kind of Ocon, Tsunoda, Zhou kind of battle around the kind of lower reaches of the points. I think it was very much possible for them to get something out of the weekend. Piastri was a little bit sort of behind that, but I think he dropped like ultimately 4 or 5 positions. So assuming Norris drops kind of the same amount, he's in that Ocon battle. So I think P7, P8 was possible, but losing so much time at the start, nothing can get that back if there's no inclement weather, no safety car, no anything. It was a very straightforward race, and that was the last thing that they wanted.
Yeah, well, next time out will be in Canada, a track, of course, that has had great memories for McLaren in the past. Let's hope it'll be a better track than this weekend in Barcelona for them. Well, that wraps up our video today. We want to hear from you, though, in the comments below, what you thought of all the action that you saw. What do you think about that mixed up qualifying that we saw yesterday? It ultimately failed to deliver a mixed up race, but Mercedes fans will say, no, hang on, we're very happy. Back on the podium, a 2 and a 3. Hamilton and Russell both very happy. Speaking afterwards, the team were fined, by the way, €10,000 for an infraction where their physios, I think their number 2s kind of got a little bit too close to them in Parc Fermé afterwards, but doesn't affect the result anything like that at all. We want to hear from you what you thought about the action that we saw this afternoon and the things you've heard on this video. We love to hear what's on your mind, so let us know. If you're not subscribed to the channel yet, you can do so. Hit subscribe and the like button, give us a thumbs up, and we'll make more videos just like this one. Stay tuned. We'll see you on the next one.